All right, hey everybody, welcome to Pastors Getting Personal podcast. Just want to thank you for jumping in and joining. And the vision for the podcast is simply, it's for lead pastors to come on and share their heart. And we just talk about life behind the scenes, off the stage, and it's random conversation. We really don't plan anything out. And so my goal is that for some of you are pastors and you may be watching, whether you're associate staff, youth pastor, but for real with the senior pastors, you're able to hear some true life from other guys and what they're going through, how they've gone through it. We celebrate some wins and a lot of good stuff. And so that's one part. And then also I've even had feedback now from people that watch that are church attenders, and they hear some things from different pastors, and it's just really driven them to pray more for others. And so that's why we encourage you so much to be a part of this and watch. We had a great time just speaking with Pastor Caleb Cole from Project Church in Sacramento. And we were able to talk about things. You're going to enjoy it so much, from identity to being on a sabbatical, and just different leadership lessons learned over time. And he's just a real wide open dude as far as his life and sharing and in his ministry. And so we went into a lot of different places. So I know you're going to enjoy it. You're going to be encouraged. So without further ado, check out this one, Pastors Getting Personal podcast. All right, everybody. We're here today with Caleb Cole, pastor of Project Church in Sacramento and South Sacramento, Old Sacramento, the whole thing. And so we've known each other for quite a while now. Now I remember when you planted the church.
Yeah, 12 years.
Yeah, man. So, hey, so tell us, we're just going to dive in. Tell us a little bit about kind of your past getting as far as ministry. I got to ask some questions about your grandpa, and
of course
that kind of, he's one of the heroes of Giants. But how did you get into ministry, your pathway, going to school, and just how that all come together?
Yeah, well, first, thanks for having me on, Dave. Yeah. We do go back, man, over a decade now, which is crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I grew up in Sacramento.
Yeah.
Like you, we actually went to the same high school.
Yeah.
So
Capital.
Alma mater together. But went to the same high school. I graduated. And early on, I was 12 years old when I heard the Lord, speak to me. Actually at the altar after one of my grandfather's sermons.
Really?
And I went down to the altar. He preached a message on missions and taking the gospel around the world. And I went forward and I heard the Lord speak, not audibly, but, that voice in my heart, just calling me to be a pastor. And I remember it because my grandfather actually came and prayed for me, which didn't happen very often. Mm-hmm. And he said, "Caleb, what's the Lord speaking to you?" And I told him,
"Wow,
he just
awesome.
Called me to be a pastor." And he responded, "Of course he did."
That's what we do. We're cold.
Yeah. I was like, what kind of response is that? Of course he did. He had that deep booming voice.
Yeah. Did he say why he said that?
No, I told him the story.
I wonder if he just seen it
years later, and he's like, "I don't remember that."
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
of course he did.
So I was 12. So all through high school, I kind of had the mentality of hey, I'm going to go into ministry. I was a basketball player though, so I really wanted to. I had dreams for a minute, going to the NBA.
Yeah.
But I realized quickly on hey, I'm good, but I ain't that good.
Yeah.
So I did play basketball in college, but I went off to Missouri to a Christian school. I played 4 years of college basketball while doing ministry or studying for ministry.
Yeah.
Got a biblical studies major. Then I got my master's in theological studies, met my wife, and we ended up on the East Coast. So I knew pretty much all growing up that I was called to be a pastor. I never strayed from that path. I have a really boring story of met the Lord when I was 5 years old, baptized at 12 in the Jordan River in Israel, called to ministry at 12, served the Lord my whole life.
Right.
Went straight to Bible college and then full-time ministry at 21 years old.
Yeah, you didn't kill anybody, use drugs, or the whole thing. One of those big testimonies.
I actually always felt like my testimony was so boring. I'm like, that's so lame. I have such a lame testimony. But one of my friends who came out of a wild lifestyle, drugs. He was a drug dealer.
Yeah.
I was telling him my testimony one time when we were in college. He played basketball with me, but loved the Lord. And I told him my story and was like, I know it's boring. And he's like, bro, don't ever say that. He's like, there's nothing boring about that. And he was like, I wish my story was that you never strayed from the Lord. He's like, it took me hitting rock bottom to come back to God. But he's like, you need to share that story more. Like that's a story of faithfulness and obedience. And so he actually propped me up where now I'm a little more proud of it.
Yeah.
You know, at 20, I thought it was lame, but
well, when I was a youth pastor, I would, you have your church kids, in the church. And I remember when I would be we'd be discipling or whatever and trying to help them learn how to share a testimony. Like, man, I was born in the church. Well, think about all the things that go on in churches that people won't go to church because of or whatever. Yeah. And you are still here serving the Lord and you love God and you're not letting, that's a huge testimony.
Yeah.
So
yeah, my story. I mean, you wanted to get juicy, so I'll just tell you. And this is
we're just being real.
Yeah. Being real. It's not 100% only my story to tell, but when I was 12, the same year I was called to ministry, my parents went through a really challenging time in their marriage. There was some infidelity, and I honestly thought their marriage was over. My mom ended up not in our home for a few weeks. Okay. Didn't even know where she was. And so, I hit a really low point at that point. It was right after God had called me to ministry. But then my mom came back and my dad forgave her and welcomed her back into our home. And then the church really surrounded my parents, loved them, walked them through the reconciliation process. And then they both ended up, back in ministry in the local church where they served up until my mom retired just 2 years ago. Okay. She was on staff in women's ministry. My dad still serves as my executive pastor at our church. And so I feel like actually my dad set the example of the gospel for me of grace and forgiveness and second chances. And then seeing the power of the church and what it can do when it operates the way it's supposed to, when it loves people, when it believes for reconciliation and surrounds people in their time of struggle. At that point, I think I was kind of this is what I want to be a part of. I want to be a part of the church seeing marriages restored. I want to be a part of a church that sees people reconciled to one another. And that kind of set me on that trajectory where it's I saw some bad things in the church too, of course, we all have, but I also saw what the church is capable of. Yeah. And my parents are still married to this day, 40,
that's so awesome,
8 years of marriage and coming up on 50. And so that's just the power to me of the gospel and the power of the church. And so I wanted to be a part of that, and be a part of leading something like that would really help restore people.
It's really incredible because it can, easily go the other way. And I remember, and I'm working up to a question. I remember, because I went to junior high and high school at Capitol. So I remember hearing about the story, right? So what was it like? You're in school there, you're in church there. Yeah. Obviously, this isn't something that's hidden at a church that's 4,000 or so, 5,000, whatever.
Yeah, they had to get up on stage and talk about it.
Wow.
So they got up on stage. My mom asked for forgiveness to the whole congregation. My dad talked about how they were committed to working things out. Wow. So yeah, it was not hidden. No, that was the hardest part about it.
For you, especially. How did you handle, what was it like? It's just out there known. Here you are, a 12-year-old. Yeah. And what was that like?
Yeah. Again, that was the hardest part because people would say things, especially in school. I feel like at church, people are more gentle. Yeah. But the school was attached. And so classmates, I had things said to me, but I think ultimately it was I saw God working in their marriage. And so I had to just ignore the negativity that would come towards us because it was so public. I mean, like you said, 4,000 people in this church. Right. And everybody knew. Right. The whole school knew. And so that was the hardest part about it. But I think seeing my parents' courage to face it, it was if they can face it,
Yeah.
ultimately it's not my shame, that or could have been my shame,
Yeah.
They were facing it head on with courage. I felt like you can deal with a few comments here and there.
Yeah.
But that was the hardest point because you're young and you don't know how to navigate all that. It definitely impacted me emotionally, because you go through something like that and you try to build up walls to protect yourself. And
Right.
it took me a lot of years. I think even in marriage, like I had a lot of walls emotionally built up that had started back then. It was like I was wounded, I was hurt. I'm never going to let anyone hurt me again.
Yeah.
And the Lord had to soften me, and I had to identify, some of the wounds of my childhood even, and get healing. And, you can suppress things for a long time, but the Lord, He's used therapists. I've gone to therapy.
Nice.
Had spiritual fathers, leaders in my life that really have helped me over the last few years to heal fully. I'm still not the most emotionally aware person in the world, but I'm doing better than I was.
So one thing, I've always thought your dad is courageous.
Yeah.
I've never known him up close. We run into each other, that kind of thing. But from a distance, I always thought he was courageous and strong for just taking that stand as a godly man. And it's just not common. So it's really cool. So how have you seen going through that? In whatever way, how has it affected your ministry as a pastor now? To where you either perceive, I don't know, the healing in church, or like now you really reach out and lean into de-churched people, or I don't know, how has it affected your ministry, would you say?
Yeah, I think it's impacted me in that I've always walked and led our church with just a lot of grace for people. And that isn't always the norm. I think that church is known for having a religious spirit.
Yeah.
It's known for a standard that if it's ever missed, that there are dire consequences.
Yeah.
And we're going to expel the immoral brother. It's biblical.
Right.
And that is biblical, but I think we also see mercy, reconciliation, grace, forgiveness throughout Scripture.
Yeah.
And so I think I've always led from that place. Maybe sometimes to a fault, where like people can get away with maybe a little too much. And it's like, we got to hold people accountable.
Yeah.
I think I've gotten a better balance of that, in the last few years. But yeah, I think always giving people a second chance. And I think that's how I've led our church. Like, hey, we're a church of second, third, fourth chances.
Yeah.
We're going to fall short. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to sin. We're going to sometimes have big sins.
Yeah.
But ultimately the Lord still loves us and He can still use us and redeem us.
Yeah.
And then I think for me, it went the opposite, where I held myself to an ultra high standard. Like in every area of my life,
really?
It's like everything has to be perfect. I mean, purity, health. It was like everything was this ultra discipline, but it was honestly done from a place of unhealth and brokenness. Like I was like, I will never be that or do that. No one will ever be able to talk about me. There's never going to be a story like that in my life. And it wasn't done unto the Lord, to be honest. It was done out of self-protection.
Yeah.
And it was done out of, the broken place of I refuse to be that. Now, it served me well in that I have lived a life very much above reproach, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think in so many areas of my life. But it wasn't until recently that I think I realized, like, hey, I got to shift my heart posture, my spirit, to where, like, no, I'm doing this unto the Lord. This isn't about, because it was about Caleb.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to be this perfect image person because I don't want to be that, and that'll protect me from ever being talked about, rather than I'm being this because this is what it looks like to serve God.
Right.
He's done so much for me and paid the ultimate price for me. Out of my love for Him, I'm going to live a life that's pleasing to Him.
Yeah.
And so I was doing it sometimes for the wrong reasons, but hey, God uses everything, right? Even the broken parts of us.
All things work together.
And my wife's happy about it. So
yeah, that's a good thing.
But more recently, I think He's been shifting that part of my heart, and I'm like, no, I'm doing it for Him now.
Right.
It's not about broken little 12-year-old Caleb anymore. It's about
and ultimately it's about I'm doing this. I want to honor the Lord with my life.
Yes.
I just want to bring him joy. I want to bring that to him. And so when you have that shift, that's
who doesn't love an obedient child?
Yeah.
I love when my children obey. I'm blessed by that.
Yeah.
In the same way, I want to be that kind of child for my father, but I wasn't that for a long time.
Come on, dude. You were perfect raising church and the whole thing. Everything went right for you, dude.
Right.
Yeah. So, okay. So going back, you were a youth pastor on the East Coast?
Yeah. So I was in Massachusetts for 5 years, youth and young adult pastor at a church, good sized church for Massachusetts. It was like 1,000 people. So everyone thought we were like a mega church there,
Really?
This is the biggest church I've ever seen in my life. And I'm like, bro, I grew up in a church of 4,000 people.
Yeah.
This ain't that big. But out there aren't mega churches,
Wait, so outside of like Boston or whatever, more rural or what?
No, we were in Springfield, Massachusetts. So it's one of the major cities. Yeah. It's where the Basketball Hall of Fame is, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So that was a big church, huh?
Basketball Hall of Fame is in Springfield, Massachusetts.
And they do college, it does everything. NBA players, all of them, right?
Yep.
Okay. All right.
So MJ came to get inducted while I was on staff there.
Oh, really?
I'm like, MJ's in town.
Oh, dude, I remember his speech too, man. It's like, that's rough, dude.
His speech was horrible.
Oh my gosh,
His speech was all like, here's all the people that doubted me and hated me. And look at me now.
Yeah,
like,
this is who I've become.
His motivation was from a broken, unhealthy place.
Right. and but that's also what made him through all the years. It's just too bad. It's like, dude, you're really that like still in life, man. So
yeah.
Wow.
I can relate to MJ actually.
So you end up coming out, and who do you work for when you come out?
Yeah. So we were there, and we actually started feeling called to plant a church. So even in college, I felt like the Lord told me, you're going to be a church planter. You're going to start your own church. This was when church planting was kind of just starting to happen more. Up until then, like I didn't even heard of it, until college.
Okay.
Like I didn't even know people started new churches.
Really? Yeah. Really? See, and I grew up in one. So
yeah,
that's
got
funny.
it. I wasn't in that world. And so in college, I started hearing about church plants and starting a church. And I'm like, what? I've never heard of that. Like, I would love to do that. I see myself doing something like that. So we told our pastor there, we're moving back to the West Coast. We felt like the Lord called us back to the West Coast, me and Chrissy. And so we moved back. We came to Sacramento because my parents lived here. And we were like, we'll stay with you for a few months while we figure out where we're going to plant. We thought we were going to plant in the Bay Area.
Oh, okay.
And we went out there to like pray over San Francisco. And while we were here, or actually on our drive, my grandfather called me and was like, hey, he had taken over Trinity Life Center in North Highlands. And he reached out to me and was like, hey, what if you came to our church on staff for a season and help us plant a church in a church? He knew that I wanted to plant a church, so he used the right language. Because they were a very old church. I mean, probably average age was like 72. But they were growing because he was having all this transfer growth. Yeah. And they needed to get younger. And at the time, I'm 29. Yeah. And he's like, come help us. We need a contemporary service. You can run that. Plant a church in a church. Right. So we just really felt like we didn't know where we wanted to plant. So this is a good kind of transitional piece. So we went there, started contemporary service. It was a bit of a practice run of planting a church. Okay. And it came out the gate. It was doing really well, actually. And then we had only had the contemporary service open for, I want to say, like 8 or 9 months. Mm-hmm. I'd been there for 18 months, and my grandfather had a heart attack and died in the parking lot of our church. Yeah. And so that kind of like threw everything in the church, in our world, into chaos. Yeah. We were already talking that they would send us out to plant anyways. Yeah. But that kind of made things questionable because they needed a pastor. I'm only 29. Still, the church's average age is now maybe 69 because we added some young people. And the church was not ready for a young leader like me. Right. Nor did I fit, honestly. It was not a good fit. And so we were like, hey, we want to plant anyways. They brought in an interim guy, and they finally blessed us and said, like, hey, you should leave. Yeah. Go plant. You should leave. They encouraged us to leave.
So your grandfather passes away. Yeah. I remember going to that to his funeral, his celebration of life. Yeah. And it was like with all the testimonies or everybody who's sharing or whatever, it was like leadership school.
Yeah.
You know, you hear so many things. I just remember so many different comments and different angles because I left at the 4-hour mark.
It was just over 4 hours.
Yeah, and it just went so long. But if you look back at your grandfather, what are a couple of things? Because for those of you that don't know, well, how would you describe your grandfather as far as his ministry in a brief, like 1-minute scenario, who he was? Because a lot of people may not know who Pastor Glenn Cole is.
I mean, he was larger than life, but he came from the Northwest and came down to Sacramento in 1979 and took over Bethel Temple. Yeah. And very quickly changed the name of this church. It was a church of about 800 at the time. So it was a good-sized church. Yeah. And it just grew really rapidly. Started a school, Capital Christian School. They changed the name to Capital Christian Center, and it grew so rapidly they got this property and built a new building over on Highway 50, and very quickly the church exploded to 4,000 people. So he was really like the pastor of the region. Yeah. They were the biggest church in the area for 20
like not
years.
Just our denomination. I mean, just completely.
Yeah. So back in the 80s, there weren't that many large churches in Sacramento either. Right. So it was the largest church, the flagship church for the AG, Assemblies of God, which is what it was affiliated with. Yeah. In Northern California. Right. And he was just a very magnetic, larger-than-life personality. So everyone in the Sacramento region knew him that knew the church world. Yeah. Really strong leader. Good at everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? Very, very strong, but full of grace, too, at times. I just heard some really cool... You don't always hear the moments and hear all the things, but I know of so many ministers that have come from, obviously that ministry being the size of that church, but so many ministers today that it's just cool when someone has a legacy like that. So what are one or two things that stick out about your grandfather that, I don't know, that you just hold on to or you think about as far as leadership?
As far as leadership? Yeah. I mean, I do think it's cool. Like, I had a different perspective because I think it was probably harder for my uncle and my dad being in his shadow as his sons. Yeah. For me, I was the grandson. It was just a different dynamic. Like we were, like super tight. He was my hero, idol, like one of my best friends. He would call me all the time. We would talk every week. When I was in Massachusetts, we would talk every week.
Really?
Yeah. And we just had a different relationship than he even had with probably my dad and my uncle. And I think there's something with that with grandfathers and and grandsons. Yeah. But I think when it comes to leadership, like the biggest takeaway that I had from him was just that he was so confident in who God had called him to be that he was humble. And it's like almost like antithetical to say or think about. Yeah. Because usually you think of these ultra confident people like they're prideful. Yeah. But what I watched with him was like his confidence was so strong, but it was in the Lord. And so what I found is like you can be so confident in the Lord and who he's called you to be, what he's called you to do, that you're actually living with humility. And that's what I saw with him. Wow, that's good. And I've tried to embody that because I think too many people make themselves small. Yeah. And they think that's humility, and it's actually pride because, again, they're making it about them. Yeah. I got to lessen myself. I don't want people to be offended or bother anyone. It's like you're making it about you. Like if the Lord's called you to be something and do something and go somewhere, like why would you not be confident in it? Because it's not you that called you to it. It's him that called you to it. So that's what I think I learned most from him is like he was so confident, he was humble. But because his confidence was in the Lord, it was never in himself. Yeah. And I'm not saying he wasn't human and I'm sure he had pride at moments. But when I watched him, I'm like, he just believed so much what the Lord was speaking to him, how the Lord was telling him to move, what the Lord was telling him to say, that he said it with ultra boldness and confidence and was like, yeah, the rest is in God's hands. And to me, it was actually humility. Wow. It wasn't him, it was the Lord. That's the only way you could walk with that much confidence.
Yeah, that's really cool.
So I think that's what I learned most from him.
Yeah, it's a fine line. And there's so many things like I've heard on the personal touch. Again, you think of a pastor that on such a high scale.
Yeah.
And then, but at the same time, behind the scenes, I've heard so many times where he would be he kept such great records of families when he did funerals or marriages, and he'd always be able to. I mean, I never even thought that far. I remember hearing that on how he was able to. He'd be at a funeral. He'd be able to say, "Oh, such and such, and I did their wedding, or I did this, dedicated their child." And there's just so many things that he did that were, it's really excellent.
Well, I would say administratively he was the best, which you don't normally have leaders who are incredible administrators organizationally.
Yeah.
Dynamic leaders, visionaries, and incredible preachers and teachers. Like you don't normally have all that in one, and he had all that. Unfortunately, I didn't get all that. All right, like I got maybe one thing. But he had all of that, and that's what I think led to him having so much success. Is like this is a person that could lead on all levels. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think some of us, like me, who don't lead at that level in all those areas, we learned to just have people around us that we trust and empower to do those things.
Part of that's that generation too.
It is that generation, yeah.
I mean, so you come back here, you end up getting encouraged and released to start senior pastors, lead pastors, and men's ministry directors, leaders, pastors, etc. Hey, I just wanted to share with you, I don't know if you know about the book that I wrote that recently came out called Fearless Men, and the goal of the book is conquering the struggles, insecurities, and pressures threatening your soul. And so I just want to encourage you to pick this up. It sounds like churches are beginning to use it for small group material, and I'm even getting invited to go and speak at retreats, conferences, and different men's events. So I would love to be a part of what you're doing, and you can visit my website, davenovakministries.com. And I just want to say this, my goal for your men, for any man that reads this book or who I speak to, is I just want to see men that are willing to run through a brick wall for their faith, their family, and their future. And so if you want that, I'm your dude to come out and just be with you guys and minister. So thanks for considering, and I hope to see you soon. Church, and then so you end up not in the Bay Area, you end up here. What was the journey like starting project? And
yeah, so we still were thinking about the Bay Area, but Christy and I, we went on another trip to San Francisco, prayed over the city. We thought East Bay, maybe SF, the city. And then we both wrote down in our journals. I told her, write down where the Lord is leading you. And I did too, and we both wrote down Sacramento. Wow. But we both wrote down downtown Sacramento. So what we realized is we started spending a lot of time in downtown when we were here. And we saw there hadn't been any new churches down there in a long time. Everything that was there was either more conservative or very, very one-dimensional in terms of like race or denominationally. Right. And so we were like, man, I think there needs to be a new church down here. Yeah. And so the Lord put it on our heart. So we left there. We asked them for their blessing that we could plant. It was still like 30 minutes away, you know? Yeah. So we're like, hey, can we plant in downtown? We wanted the blessing of that church because we didn't want them upset. Yeah. And we did have a few relationships. So we also asked, like, there were 5 families that we were connected with, 5 couples. And we just asked if they would give permission for those 5 to go with us. And they did. So then those 5 went with us. So in 6 months, I raised a bunch of money, and we launched Project Church in downtown Sacramento in an old bank building, 1 block from the state capitol. So it went very quick. Yeah. But I was like, hey, there's no plan B. This is it. Let's rock. And we were already in town. We already had connections. So it did give us a leg up to get going. So you started, and you guys are going for 12 years now. Yeah. Take us just through some stages of growth from, I know you ended up in the Crest Theater, then you end up getting a building, and just what was that journey like? Yeah, so the first 7 years we were mobile. set up, tear down. We moved 3 different locations, all within one block, though, right there. We went from a bank to a music venue to the Crest Theater, which is this like iconic old theater in downtown.
Yeah.
But we never had any kids space. So we were like throwing kids in a basement with like rats and...
Oh.
Bro, like the basement at the Crest was disgusting. And we would just like throw some lights and banners up and throw the kids
Try to
down
cover
there.
it up. And
Oh, bro. So we were having good attendance, but we'd have like on a Sunday morning, we were running at the time at the Crest, we were probably running like 400 to 500.
Yeah.
With like 20 kids total.
Oh, wow.
So it was just a young adult
I wonder what
church.
they found out about the rats, dude.
Yeah, exactly. So I actually was like, I'm a young adult pastor. Like for the first 7 years of our church, we were still doing young adult ministry. Our church was predominantly young adults, which meant we had no money.
Yeah.
But the Lord started to bring a few like bigger donors as the 7 years were coming to an end. And I felt like, man, we need a building. And so we started looking. For 2 years, we looked. Nothing but closed doors. Every building we'd put an offer in. Like these buildings would be for lease or for purchase. We offered to purchase 2 different buildings at full price. And they're like, never mind, we're not selling it now. And we're like, what? It was bizarre. The Lord just kept closing door after door.
Yeah.
So finally, I was so distraught and discouraged. I told our broker, like, I'm done. Don't bring me any other buildings. And you know him.
Yeah.
Dave Smith. But
I
was like, bro, don't bring me other.
Yeah.
You gave me him, actually.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, you recommended him.
Okay,
to
for
me.
others who need somebody, Dave Smith's the guy. So.
There you go. I was like, don't bring me any other buildings. We looked at so many, and I'm like, I'm done. And then he called me after like 3 months. He's like, hey, I know you said don't bring you any other buildings, but this one isn't even on the market. And I want to show you a building in Old Sacramento. And I'm like, Old Sac, bro? Heck no. Like, what do you mean? Like, because Old Sac, if you know, in Sacramento, it's like a tourist destination.
Yeah.
It's all these old Western vibe buildings. And I'm like, ain't no way I'm going to Old Sac.
Yeah.
It was only 8 blocks from our current location. And so we walked through. And at the end of the walkthrough, I'm like, oh my goodness. We've walked through 13, 14 buildings. Everyone was a no. And every time I came up with a reason why this building could work. But there always was a but attached to it.
Yeah.
This was the first time I looked at my wife and I said, this building has everything we need.
Wow.
And I was like, I think this is it. And so we put an offer in to purchase. They accepted it. We started renovating it. COVID hit. Chaos ensued, which for us became a blessing because we just went online and weren't paying money to rent, a theater or a school anymore. Because at that point we had another campus in West Sacramento. We were running 2 campuses.
Yeah.
And we just put all our money into renovating the building. People kept giving. And then the week Gavin Newsom said, okay, you can have church again, was the week our building was finished. And so we said, we're open.
Oh, awesome.
And we opened, and, it was a slow build back to a full church. But now we have the 2 locations, Old Sacramento, South Sacramento. Total, we're running, we've grown through the years, but we're running between 800 and 900 now on a Sunday morning. So we're not a mega church or anything,
man.
but
no, that's awesome.
But we're a healthy, growing, good-sized church. We have a lot more families now.
Yeah.
A lot more kids coming as we've kind of changed venues. The venue change was good for us, too.
Yeah.
We have a nice kids area now. No rats.
Yeah. So, and then for those of you that don't know, the South campus that you had was actually a church I planted.
Yes.
Streamline Church.
I don't know if you wanted to go there. So
Yeah, I'll go anywhere. I don't care. No, we started that back in 2008. And then I ended up leaving in 2015 to start the ministry that I'm doing now, out and speaking. And then the church chooses to become a campus.
Yeah, it was a cool
project.
kind of transition. Dave actually connected me with the board.
Yeah, we had lunch one day and we were talking about it.
Yeah, well, he just told me kind of what was going on. He was leaving and they didn't have a pastor. And I just remember you saying, like, I think they might close.
Yeah.
And so I left. I didn't say a word to you. And then I texted you. I was like, bro, I don't want to, last thing I want to see is a church close. So what would you think if I talked to the board? And he's like, do it. And so he sent me the contact.
They had everything on the table, man, at that point. So.
Yeah. Sent me the contact for one of the board members. We connected. The district kind of got involved and they were all behind it.
Yeah.
And so it's probably going on 2 years ago now that.
Yeah, it's flown by.
That they agreed to basically become one of our campuses, come into the Project Church family.
Yeah.
And I've been going strong there since.
Got a new campus pastor there.
Yep.
And got the whole team. Of
It's
going.
an exciting season. I think that campus has a lot of momentum right now. Good things happening. We just had a worship night there on Wednesday night, packed.
Oh, that's so cool.
We did dinner beforehand, so 100+ people out in the parking lot eating burgers and dogs.
Awesome. Yeah.
And then even more showed up for the worship night. It was pretty awesome. It's always good when you run out of communion.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice.
It's a good sign.
Yeah. So, how many did you have show up for that night?
We had over 200 there that night.
That's awesome, dude.
For a worship night, which is cool.
Yeah. So, so now for you, we had talked about how you went on sabbatical.
Yeah.
And there was some cool stuff that just really some just a personal work got it done. And when did you go on the sabbatical?
Yeah. So the thing was, most people go on sabbatical at 7 years.
Yeah.
But 7 years was when COVID hit. And so we ended up waiting because we're like, well, we can't go anywhere. And the church was just in such like chaos and disarray. I'm like, I can't leave right now. We had planned on it. So we actually delayed it almost 2 years.
Okay.
So at almost year 9, we were like 8.5+ in. We took a 3-month sabbatical. And
so awesome.
yeah,
dude.
3 months of no work, no church, no preaching, no teaching, no meetings. And it's funny because you and I talked about it last week when we got together. And then I ended up sharing a little bit of the story with my church on Sunday. It just kind of fit with my message.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah. I'd never talked to them about it. And so I was like, man, you made me think I should share this with my church too.
So we can go there. I was wondering if you...
Yeah. So essentially, I think I just went through an identity crisis. My whole identity since I was 21 was pastor, minister, leader. And I've always led. I've always been a leader. I was the 8th grade class president. Just everywhere I went, I felt like, okay, captain of all my sports teams, just like that's how it went.
Yeah.
And so I had a little bit of identity crisis of like, who am I if I'm not leading?
Yeah.
And who am I if I'm not preaching and teaching?
Right.
And what I started to feel in the moment was like that I was fake. I started to feel like I only do this thing for me. I only preach for me. It's only about what I get.
Yeah.
And that's what I preached on Sunday was like what Paul talked about in Philippians chapter 1, verse 12 through 18. He talks about the gospel being proclaimed, but he's like, some people preach from selfish ambition.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
They preach for wrong reasons and a wrong heart. But what did Paul say? He's like, still, I'm going to rejoice in it.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if they're doing it for the right reason or the wrong reasons. Christ is being preached.
People are getting saved. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what I realized.
But the backdrop of that was because you're skipping the actor part. You should be in some movies, right?
No,
or on Broadway.
I was not going to go there, bro.
Okay, okay. You can just skim over that.
No, Dave's trying to make me look stupid out here.
No. Okay.
I'll be honest.
Briefly,
he wants me to be honest. I'll be honest. Okay. I was in drama and plays and all that in high school and growing up.
Dude, I thought you shared this part. Okay.
No, I didn't share this.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
I didn't want them thinking that much about me, but I thought. For a little season there, I thought maybe I was going to be an actor. That's what I kind of wanted to do. So that was part of this thing of me feeling like a fake. I'm like, I just like the stage. I just like the platform. I just like the microphone.
Right.
And I want to be an actor. And what's the next best thing? I get to come up and preach and teach. But am I acting? So I went through this identity crisis in these. It was really the first month, 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah.
Because
it takes about 4 or 5 weeks to come down.
Yeah,
on my sabbatical, that's how. Oh yeah, totally.
Right? From leading and the adrenaline of always leading and being on the stage.
Yeah.
And so this identity guy's like, dude, you're just an actor. You're a fake.
Yeah.
And so in the midst of this, though, we go on a couple vacations. We're going on trips.
Yeah.
And I'm actually an evangelist by nature. I just have always shared my faith with people, random people, run into people. When I coach a lot of my kids' sports, I end up sharing the gospel with my assistant coaches. And so I'm on this trip, on these vacations, and next thing you know, I'm in the hot tub and I'm sharing the gospel with this couple. And I'm at the grocery store and I see someone and I feel like the Lord lead me to pray for them. So I go pray for them. I talk to them about Jesus. And it was just one of my assistant coaches going through a tough time in his marriage. reaches out to me. I'm on sabbatical. He doesn't know.
Yeah.
He doesn't go to my church. He's like, hey, can we get together? Tells me what he's going through. I counsel him. I pray for him. I tell him he needs to give his life to Jesus, like that this is what he needs. And so lead him in prayer right there. Start discipling him.
Yeah.
And so in all this, in the midst of me feeling like a fake, it was like it took multiple events.
Yeah.
For finally, one time I'm in prayer, still feeling like the fake, and the Lord's like, Caleb, you're still doing this.
Yeah.
You're not on the stage.
Right.
You're not on the platform. You're not leading your church, and you're evangelizing. You're leading people to Jesus. You're praying with people. Like, you're not a fake. This is who you are.
Right.
But it almost like it took a few events of me doing it for the Lord to confirm it in my heart. Like, no, this is really in your heart.
Yeah.
And has there been times I've preached from selfish ambition? Probably. I've been up there and felt myself.
Yeah.
When
When you're in the zone and you're feeling,
I walked off the stage like, dang, I killed that.
Hey, but you know what's something I decided to do? I decided there are times when you just know, man, I was on point. The Lord was in this or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get in my car and I'm going to celebrate with the Lord for a little bit. No one else is around.
Yeah.
But I know he was digging it too, And so, but when you came back, here you are, you have this more assurance from the Lord on your identity. How did that end up impacting you when you come back after 12 weeks?
Well, what the Lord showed me and Chrissy was that he used that time to strip away all of our selfish ambition. And look, I'm an ambitious person, I had a lot of selfish ambition in ministry, and God uses everything. I think he used it. I'm a competitive person, right? Athlete. You were an athlete, college athlete. Like, bro, I want to win at everything, including church and ministry, So I do think God used it at times because he doesn't waste anything, even our flesh. But in that season, the Lord stripped away a lot of that selfish ambition where I came back and I just felt like my motivation was more pure. And I came back in my preaching. Our congregation, our staff were like, bro, you're different.
Really?
Like everyone was telling me that. And I'm like, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
But then the Lord's like, yeah, you are. I came back. I think there was just more of I was preaching from a more authentic place of love for the Lord and living to please the Lord rather than living and preaching for myself, And not that it was always for myself. There was always a little bit of Caleb,
right?
Mostly God and a little bit of Caleb.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I've purged it completely. I'm sure there's still a little bit of Caleb in there at times. But I think for the most part, that selfish ambition was pulled away and it was like, dude, I'm doing this for an audience of one.
Yeah.
And I for the first time I came back and the fear of man was more purged from my life. Like I used to avoid some of the hard topics because I was worried about what people would think because it was about Caleb.
Yeah.
I came back, I'm like, let's talk about all of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because now this is about the Lord and what he's telling me to say. I'm not worried about what anyone thinks or says. Yeah. And so I'm gonna speak what I believe is in the word. Even if it goes against culture, which so often it does.
Right.
And the fear of man was just being purged out of my life too.
So there are so many. Now it took me, I think in the 13th year or so that I finally took a sabbatical. Went 9 weeks. And about 5th weekend, I felt like kind of a human. I never knew what it was almost like you don't know what a human is until finally you get that far. You shut everything down. But in the same way, when I was on sabbatical, that's when the Lord showed me some things about my future in ministry and when there's a shift. And I wonder what the percentage is of pastors that do not take it, that don't think they can, that almost sounds like it's not right, or feel like no one's going to agree. That doesn't sound, devil doesn't take a vacation, You say, because obviously it did such a transformation, which I think that's the purpose of sabbatical. We don't see how deep it can get. Yeah. What would you say to someone who, I don't know, is maybe wrestling with some of those things on sabbatical and for whatever reason?
I would just encourage people. First of all, you need rhythms of rest outside of sabbatical. Yeah. Carey Nieuwhof just had a great podcast about it.
Yes.
Where he talked about like, if you're just waiting for the sabbatical because you're so exhausted, it's not, first of all, your rhythms aren't right.
Yeah.
And it's not going to do what you think it's going to do.
Yeah.
Right. You're going to come back and very quickly be exhausted again.
Yeah.
So I do think, number one, you need a regular rhythm of rest.
Yeah.
And so I believe big time in Sabbath. So Fridays are very sacred and protected by me and my wife. You know, anyone in our church that texts me or slacks me or emails me, like, you're not getting a response on my Sabbath. I'm doing something for myself that refuels me. I'm connected with the Lord and with my wife, right?
Yeah.
We make sure we're very intentional about, like, we connect on that day.
Yep.
Emotionally, practically, physically, praise the Lord. And
that's awesome.
Nothing like Sabbath sex.
Hey,
Dave.
dude, I wasn't trying to go juicy like that, man. But whatever, go ahead.
Can I say that on this podcast?
I don't. That's fine.
Why not? Okay.
This pastor's getting personal, so
yeah. I mean, I'm leaving. You gotta deal with the.
Oh, it's no problem at all. I'm fine.
So that rhythm of rest is so important.
Yeah,
and we've implemented that. It's why actually going to this sabbatical, I didn't feel like super burnt out. It was more like, hey, I think this is wise.
Yeah.
Now, after doing it, I would encourage everyone to do it.
Yeah.
I'm going to hopefully do it again in a couple years.
Yeah.
We're at 12 when we hit 14. Just because I think that the rhythm of leading and the expectation and the weight of it is so heavy.
Oh, yeah.
And even just the weekly Sunday, like adrenaline high. And I think that there's something healthy and healing about, like, disconnecting fully, having a season off where you also can do some heart work. Because I'm like, we went into sabbatical and we're like, hey, we need to do work on this.
Yeah.
On ourselves.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'd encourage all pastors to do it. Like, I don't think you should just, like, spend 12 weeks golfing, although I did golf a lot on my 12 weeks. But I also did a lot of inner work, healing. We went to more regular therapy during those 12 weeks, her and I. We read through a book on Sabbath and rest during those 12 weeks. So we came out of it going, we're going to do better at our rhythms of rest and Sabbath. We're going to do better at emotional health, moving forward. And so it's like, I saw it as not a job, but like, hey, I'm going to do some of the work that I wouldn't have time to do otherwise. Yeah. And then some people like write a book on their sabbatical or whatever, like finish a book, like a lot of great things can happen on it. And I think pastors, the weight that we carry, it's just it's something that I saw great fruit from in my life. And I came back different. Yeah. And it was good for the church.
I don't think, it makes sense why most people who aren't pastors, they don't know at how such a high level of drive, adrenaline, constant, like thinking, you have to be creative. You have to have those juices going constantly. You have this Sunday coming up, then you have staff, then you have business, and you have all of these things to when you go and you just drop it. Because it's not like you work for the weekend, you get a couple of days off and you don't have to think about your workplace like a lot of people. It is when you go and you just drop it all and you don't do any of that. Now you've got a lot of time to think about your life. Sure. I went, that's when I did the same thing. I'm like, I'm going to go to counseling. I'm going to do some inner work. I'm going to look at some things. I was encouraged by some pastors who had done it and they said, whatever you do, don't be home. And so praise the Lord, the church had given, a good amount of money. They took offerings and people helped that happen. But, what would you say for those? Because I think, there could be pastors that are listening and like, man, I'd like to do that, but there's no way my church, or, the board would allow it. Or is there anything that you're putting in place that you could say, hey, these are some things that you could try or do to kind of get your church on board? With that, I don't know what.
Well, I think that ultimately, like, we have to lead our boards as the pastors. We're the head. Yeah. Right. And I don't know how any pastors listening, I don't know how your structure works. Yeah. And all denominations are different, but ultimately I do think we have more influence than we realize. Yeah. And we can plant seeds.
Hey, in case you don't know, the reason why I left senior pastoring my church in Sacramento was initially started because I wrote this book called No More Dad Issues. And this has been the main platform of me going and speaking on father wounds. And so that's what I do now. And so pastors, if you'd like to have me come and speak and learn more about my book and my message, you can do that. Just go to davenovakministries.com and you can find out more. And just so you can see what it's all about, check out this video and I hope to hear from you soon. What if I told you that you could break free from the wounds and the frustrations with your dad? You know, the resentment, the abandonment, the abuse that you have felt maybe, or even you get to a place of having bitterness that is built up, or you feel cheated because of your relationship with your dad. Hi, I'm Dave Novak, and I recently wrote a book called No More Dad Issues. And the reason I did was because I struggled with these issues for years. And I learned over time that in our culture and in our generation, dad issues are pervasive throughout. It doesn't matter who you are, and it doesn't discriminate. I've known people in their latter years who still are feeling the sting of dad issues because you never grow out of them. And so when I wrote this book, I decided to be very transparent with my feelings, my thoughts, my struggles in this bitter and difficult relationship that I had with my dad, who was also a pastor. And so I found this freedom. I'm going to tell you how I went through it, how I got through it, so that you can have it as well. I wrote No More Dad Issues so that you can find what I have found. So pick up a copy and let's begin to break free today.
So I started planting the seed with our board, like, hey, I want to take a sabbatical. I'd like the church to help some financially with this. Mm-hmm. Here's what. And so I just gave them a presentation of this is what I want to do, is how much time I want to take off. I didn't ask for a lot. I mean, I know pastors that are like, they wanted the church to send them to Italy and to Florida, to Disney World, and they wanted to send them I know a pastor that asked for like $50,000 worth of expenses for their 3-month sabbatical.
Wow.
I mean, you could go that extreme.
Yeah.
That's not me.
Yeah.
But we asked them, to help us with one trip and then to give us the 3 months off. That was it. And so the church, they gave us like $3,500 or $4,000 somewhere in there.
Nice.
To help us with this one trip. And then we chilled. We were home most of the rest of the time.
Yeah.
And my wife had me doing some tasks around the house too. But anyways, I would encourage them to just plant the seed with your board, bring a presentation to them. Here's what I see. Here's what I've seen other churches do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one idea that just popped in my mind, inviting someone else out who is like, for instance, like you, or, someone who's had a life-changing, like, hey, this is a ministry-changing personal thing.
Yeah.
These 12 weeks are worth it for your church, for the minister, and, just the change in how healthy you can get. On the ministry side is, what did you do for 12 weeks for ministry here? You're not preaching. You and Chrissy both are out. How did you cover that?
Well, first of all, again, I presented them with a budget like a year out.
Yeah.
So they could think, pray. We visited again at 6 months out, and then at 3 months out, we confirmed it and they approved it. So part of the budget was guest speakers.
Yeah.
Which we only brought in, I think, 3. And then the other 9 weeks, we just rotated our staff.
Nice.
Now, you may not have that, opportunity depending on the size of your church, the size of your staff.
Right.
So again, you can adjust. You don't have to take 12 weeks.
Yeah.
Even a 4-week one, a 5-week one, 6-week one would be amazing. Then maybe you could bring in enough guests or staff, rotate in there with guests. But again, if you budget it, if you prep the board, if you give them a time, that's what I found. People just need time to make decisions, and they need information to make decisions.
Well, and you planned it you did a good job with planning it way out in advance too, to where everybody could be ready. Church could be ready, right? And then...
Yeah, and we communicated it with the church, like, hey, here's what we're doing. Here's why. The board, is behind this. And you're going to get lots of great preachers and teachers still during this time. We got these guests coming. We got our staff. Actually, my last Sunday, I laid out the whole schedule for them. We're still having our regular rhythms of worship nights and everything else. There's still events happening. Yeah. Here's who's preaching. And I told them, please don't miss, just because Chrissy and I aren't here. Yeah. Be here. Like, this is your body. This is your fellowship. Gather together and we'll be back and it'll be awesome. And I was like, 3 months is going to fly by like that. And it did,
Right. Well, what was I going to ask you? Man, it was deep too.
It was so deep.
It was, man.
I don't know. You want to know more about Sabbath sex?
Yeah, can you go ahead and,
I'm just joking.
dude, that's awesome. Wait until Chrissy watches. That's cool. I don't know where to go after that one, dude.
I did want to say this. I was just thinking about ministry in general.
Yeah.
And part of why I did the Sabbath and why I have a really regular rhythm of rest is because I want to last for the long haul, right?
That's
they
good.
say 30% of pastors that start a ministry actually finish or retire still in ministry.
Yeah.
So that means 70% quit, get out, never get back in, whatever.
Right.
And there's a lot of reasons behind that, right? And there's no judgment. But one thing I've always said is I'm not the best at anything. Like, I'm not the best preacher. I'm not the best teacher. I'm not the best leader. I'm not the best administrator.
Yeah.
I'm not the best at anything. But I made a decision early on with the Lord. I was like, but I'm going to just outlast everybody.
It's good.
And I think we all want more influence.
Yeah.
And what I found is the people who have the most influence are typically the people who do it for the longest.
Yeah.
It's the people who, through the good times, the hard times, the up times, the down times, they keep going. And then their influence just grows over time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
I mean, you can think about podcasts. They say the average podcast doesn't make it past episode 4.
Really?
Yes. So the average podcast that's launched.
We did it.
Did you already make it?
Yeah.
Let's go, bro.
We have by a few, but yeah, we made it so far.
So the average podcast doesn't make it past episode 4.
Nice.
So why do these podcasts never get going, never take off? Is it because the content isn't great? Is it because these people have no idea what they're doing? Usually it's just because they didn't last long enough.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so
you don't have vision long enough for what's coming. And yeah.
Well, because most of us we want instant gratification. We want to be that flash in the pan. Even and especially in church ministry, we want our churches to blow up. Like, bro, we've had slow, steady growth for 12 years.
Yeah.
I would love for God to double us tomorrow.
Yeah, right.
Triple us, quadruple us. That's not how he works most of the time. It's not how he's worked for us. Healthy things grow slow, right? It takes time. We've had slow, steady growth for 12 years, but it's been constant growth. And I just keep telling my wife, like, I'm just going to outlast everybody and I'm going to have more influence because of it. So that's my encouragement to anyone out there. Like, just keep going. It's so easy to quit. It's hard to stay steady for many years.
Yeah.
You know, like you pastored for 18 years? Like
15.
15 is incredible, right? Like most guys don't make it more than 4 or 5 in a place.
And then a church plant, we started that. The average, I believe
3 years.
Yeah. I guess 78% don't make it past 4 years.
78% don't make it past 4.
Don't make it. Only 22% make it.
Crazy.
So, I mean, there are some things that, consistency and just staying, just staying in the game. But also the key word is health.
Yeah.
If it's not healthy, you can have all the numbers in the world, but if it's dysfunctional, if it's falling apart, it's better to be small and healthy than it is to be big. And you're like, oh man, we got chaos around here.
And I would say that about us, like I've definitely had expectations for us to be bigger than we are by now.
Yeah.
Just being real. I always thought I would lead something bigger. But what's been cool is we've just had so much health in our church.
That's good.
Like I've had very little drama.
Yeah.
It's actually been enjoyable the majority of the time with my staff, with my leadership volunteer team within our church. And I think because God's like, I'm just going to grow you little by little.
Yeah.
And as a result, you're going to have health and it's going to be enjoyable, even though it's like, but I want it bigger. But no, you don't. You'd rather it be healthier.
Right. And you got a solid foundation that you continue to build on. So
yeah, and I think more growth is coming, you know? And I still pray like, Lord, double us tomorrow. Why not?
It happening that quick, but yeah, why not?
You have not because you asked not.
Yeah.
He's like, no, you ask with wrong intentions. So.
But he can use those.
He can.
So I want to close with just saying, for those of you who have actually watched this far, because we went long, this is cool. I like to really try to build community within pastoral circles. So if there's any questions you may have about maybe Caleb's ministry and what his church is doing that's unique, or just like sabbatical stuff, or maybe you've had some family heartaches or tragedies that have happened, that we build a community to where you get ministered to, or you can reach out. So what are a couple good ways for people to get connected with you if they want to just hit you up.
Yeah.
Without calling you in the middle of the night.
What's that?
Without calling you in the middle of the night.
Yeah. My phone number is no.
Yeah.
You can email me, caleb@projectchurch.com. Really easy way to get a hold of me. And then also I'm on Instagram, Caleb D. Cole. I'm pretty active on Instagram, so if you DM me on there, I'll definitely respond to you.
Nice.
So Caleb D. Cole on IG.
All right, so check it out. Thank you for being a part of Getting Personal, Pastors Getting Personal podcast, and we have more to come. And I'm just really grateful that we got to have you on, and this has been really good, and it's been juicy.
Thanks for having me, bro.
That's what you
Love
said
what you're
we were
doing.
going to do.
Keep going.
So thanks, man. Bless you guys. So hey everyone, if you enjoyed the podcast, Pastors Getting Personal podcast, do me a huge favor. This is how you move the mission forward and help and encourage more pastors. Is would you please subscribe to this and like whatever platform you're on. Subscribe to it, and then if you could even get the word out, share it, whether it's on social media for others to jump in and watch, or it's you're just sending a link over to a friend to watch it. But this is a ministry. It's not so much to try and just have something out there, another podcast, but man, to really just see a difference made in the community of lead pastors. And so anyway, check it out, or like it and subscribe it and send it out and help us and be a part of it. All right. God bless you.